Hey team, this is Joe Johnson with Cardinal Health, and today we're going to talk about the ENFit conversion for Phase 2. And Phase 2 is going to include the small bore nasogastric pediatric feeding tubes, as well as their extension sets, and then obviously any of the connectors that we would previously use as well. So before we get into it, this is going to be Cardinal branded product only. And really, while we're here with ENFit, is really to avoid misconnections. We formed an organization, we being not only Cardinal Health, but a bunch of other manufacturers, the major manufacturers globally with the FDA, called GEDSA, Global Enteral Device Suppliers Association, to address the issue with misconnections that apparently have been very prevalent within the last couple of decades. So on this conversion for your facility, we're going to be looking at Phase 2, which is these pediatric tubes and extension sets and any way to connect to them. So with that, there's also going to be a cleaning brush for some daily maintenance. We've seen this transition connector if you use pump sets in your pediatric population on the pump itself or the pump set itself, and also a reverse funnel connector and one more connector, which we'll get into in a little bit, which is called an AMT TRN201, which is a lower lock and a slip tip connector for ENFit, very specific for specific types of syringes. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's talk about the connection itself. So that connection has changed from being what we consider a legacy connection, which is just about that hole, essentially, that funnel hole that we would normally plug into, to an ENFit connection. There are different kinds of connections in the pediatric population. Obviously, you have legacy, you have ENFit. There is one other connector called the NutriSafe 2 from a company called Vigon, which you may use as well. That is very separate. It's proprietary to that company. ENFit, on the other hand, is a global safety initiative. So this is something that's more recognized and more used across the industry. Okay. When it came to a couple of changes that we made last summer, one being discontinuing the legacy products of the nasogastric feeding tubes as well as the extension sets, we also made a change with the actual pump set. If you guys have used the pump set in your population, this used to be like this since 2015. Okay, it was hard molded before then. Then it came like this in 2015, and that was that push towards ENFit for it to be able to screw off, and then you could use this as an ENFit connection. So the pump sets for all of our feeding pumps, or Joey, the E-pump, they've been ENFit compatible since then. What we did last summer in conjunction with discontinuing those product lines was to remove this from the packaging. So this is no longer in the package, but it's still accessible. Primarily what this is going to be used for is just to connect yourself to that legacy style of connection. Okay, so we can connect right into there. So that was one of the changes that we implemented, or rather both of the changes that we implemented. So we have this guy here for our pump set and to connect into our standard or legacy tubes. When it comes to connecting the feeding tube to the pump set, well, that's really simple. That is already ENFit. So whether you're doing directly into the feeding tube or if you're using an extension set like this one here, we can connect. So let's say we're using the extension set and we'll hook all of this up. So male end of the extension set into there. We're going to soft quarter twist until that stops. You don't want to over tighten, just want to give it a twist until it stops, okay? So we're connected to our feeding tube and our extension set, and then we can connect that over to our pump set. Same thing. Soft quarter twist until it stops, okay? Now, if you're using a syringe instead of the pump set to feed your patient, and the syringes may or may not be ENFit, or there may be other types of syringes, it is recommended that you use a reverse funnel connector, especially if you're using other types of syringes. On that subject, syringes are still constrained, and ENFit specific syringes are still difficult to manufacture. We did bring some in, but they're still difficult to manufacture. So you may have to use a catheter tipped style syringe or the other type of syringes that you guys utilize. Regardless, what other type of syringes it is, there's really two connectors that we're going to be discussing to connect. So if it's your catheter or your Toomey style syringe that you guys use to administer feeds, you can use our reverse funnel connector. And basically what this is going to do is it changes that ENFit port on the patient side back over into a legacy port. So now there's that funnel. So now I can go ahead and put this in. Now, when it comes to the actual slip tip and those smaller tip syringes, those lower lock syringes, the design of ENFit is a reverse lower lock. So even a lower lock is not going to fit in this. And obviously you can't connect those. That's when this guy is going to come in handy. And this right here is from AMT. And basically what that's going to do, if you have a syringe that's similar to that slip tip style syringe, that port right there is going to screw into the tip here, into that patient's feeding port, and basically turn it back over into an adapter so we can go ahead and connect that slip tip or that lower lock into that ENFit port, if you follow me there. All right. So that's what that third adapter would be, or third connector would be for you guys. And it really is syringe dependent. So if it's your standard syringes, obviously you can use this. And you could use this with your slip tip and lower lock. It's just, it won't get all the way down to the base. So that other connector is going to be a little bit more efficient at doing that. All right. Now, one of the things that changes with the actual tubing itself is that anatomy. If you looked at it again, we have like a little channel or a moat around that center. One of the things that GEDSA recommends is that on a daily basis, give it a visual check. See if there's anything sitting in there. If there is, we can obviously blast that with a little bit of water and kind of irrigate that area, try to loosen that stuff up. You're going to want to take one of these brushes. This is the end clean brush that your facility is going forward with. Get a little water on that and really just kind of scrape out anything that might be in there, as well as check that center port to unclog if that's necessary. But that's about it. You want to do that once a day. More than likely, the facility will adopt a twice a day policy just to have a backup. But we recommend at least one time a day. Check that port. If there's nothing in it, no problem. Move on. If you are using an extension set, I will say, check both of these connections. Check the part that's hooking up to either your syringe or to your pump set, and also check in here where the feeding tube meets, and just to check that area to see if it needs to be scraped out. So as we talked about the connections, we talked about the different uses, your cleaning brush for your daily maintenance. This, if you're using your pump set, that transition connector to connect your pump set to a legacy feeding tube. And we talked about the reverse funnel connector to be able to turn your ENFit port back over into a legacy port so you can use your standard tip type of syringes. And we also talk about that TRN 201 AMT connector, which basically is going to give you the ability to make your ENFit port accept your slip tip or your lower lock syringes. So thank you guys so much. This is Joe again from Cardinal Health. I look forward to connecting with you in phase 3. Take care.